Here we have two examples of two distributor caps made for an 80 Chevy Love or 80s Isuzu Pup 1.9 liter gas engine. This is the generic cheap one that you'll find on Amazon and eBay all over the place for about $5. Its body is made of plastic. The contact terminals look like they're aluminum or some other material. Here we have another one, distributed by Intermotor, genuine parts, or SMP. I don't know who the manufacturer is, or where that it could be out of Canada somewhere. I don't know. Now, this cap is a higher quality plastic or something. You hear that tap? That sound? Now listen to this one. Okay. So this is a harder material. The terminals on the inside are brass. These have brass terminals in them. And from my understanding, these are more corrosion resistant type parts. And a little higher quality. I think this was like $13 and this one was $5. But in both cases, I would check the flatness of this surface here. Put it on a flat surface like a piece of glass. And see if it wobbles, on the glass, or if it's flat. If it's not, you can take a piece of sandpaper, like 320 grit, put it on a glass pane on a table, and you can resurface this and make it flat. And this is easily sandable, a little more easily sandable than this one, but this one should be pretty flat already. Shouldn't have any trouble with it. Today we're going to go over replacing the distributor cap on a basic, old school 70s, 80s import car, specifically the Isuzu or Chevy Love that has the Isuzu engine. This distributor has a gasket on it, which is right here. And most people, what they do is they take the cap off and they put a new cap on. Boom. Bang, and they're done. Now, I've done this myself before without even looking or paying much attention to the distributor. A lot of the times the distributor's hidden behind vacuum hoses, under wires, all kinds of things. So you can't really see what's going on. But what I have noticed is that the gasket this gasket here and the surface where the gasket rests on the housing can develop corrosion, dirt, oil, and even, you know, every area, both sides of the gasket and where the gasket rests. And what happens is it will form, all the corrosion and dirt will form lumps and bumps underneath the gasket in different places, or sometimes just on top of the gasket. So what I do is I take a green scrubby pad and some solvent, and with my fingers, holding the gasket in one hand, I'm holding the camera, it's kind of difficult here, just pretend I have two hands here, is I'll hold the gasket and I'll take a green scrubby pad and some solvent, you know, like WD-40 or something, and I'll scrub all the corrosion and dirt off of this gasket on both sides, bottom and top. And I'll also take a scrub pad or sandpaper and I'll sand and clean all the dirt and debris off of this gasket surface, because this cap needs to sit, it has to sit perfectly flat on there and secure and flat evenly, so that the rotor inside it has a metal conductive tip that spins around on the shaft. Keeps clearance or maintains clearance away from these four conductive posts under the cap. They're not supposed to touch these posts as it's spinning around. So what you have is, when there's a lumpity bump on the surface, it will cock or tilt the cap one way, and the rotor will dig into one of those contacts and then jolt the distributor after you start it and it's spinning around in there, and then it'll probably contact the other ones because it jolted it back and forth, and which will cause a misfire, and now you permanently damage the contact post inside of the cap. Now the engine probably will run like this. It might run a little rough. You might notice a miss. I've had this problem before, and the best way to deal with it is, like I said, clean the gasket, clean the surface off, and then replacing the cap. What you want to do is you want to gently set it down slowly in its place, and only goes on one way because of the slotted areas of the cap and the housing. That way you can't reverse or mess up the ignition firing order. Put it down on there gently and make sure that it sits flat. Kind of wiggle it around the cap, see if there's any sloppiness or looseness to it, and just try to make sure that it's centered on there. And if there's a little play or looseness, try to center it in the best position that you can. And then when you do that, when you get it centered and flat on there, hold it down with your hand, and with your other hand lock it in place and attach these fasteners. Now it's sitting flat and secure. Now another problem that you could run into is a lot of these parts, like this cap right here, is made or manufactured from outside of the United States. And some of these manufacturers have low quality workmanship standards, low tolerances. So what happens is some of these, they're not flat. This machine's surface, this side, does not come to you perfectly flat. And when you set this down, either on your distributor or on a flat surface like your table, what'll happen is you'll notice that it wobbles when you're resting it down on a flat surface. So it's not going to sit flat on here either. Now you might not notice this. You might not even be thinking about that. You just assume that this is a flat surface. So you take it out of the box, you're in a hurry, you get it on there, you clamp it on, and you think you're done. But just something to be aware of. Now there are different styles and models of caps from different manufacturers. This is a cheap one. I got this off of Amazon. You can get them on eBay. They're all over the place. They're the cheapest caps available, or they're like $5. They come in a white generic box, and they're usually from Mexico, and they will work. They do work, but you have to check them out, real close, and make sure that the surface is flat, machine flat surface, and just check this contact point, the spring-loaded center coil contact point. Make sure that the spring's working correctly, plunger's working, spring's back good, clean, and that's usually good enough. I don't think I've ever seen any cracks in these. It looks like some sort of cheap plastic, but it's probably good to look that over. Now another point, what could be causing the rotor to dig into the contact points is you could have a worn out shaft bearing inside the distributor, and the shaft is wobbling inside here, which is wobbling the rotor back and forth as it's spinning around. It's causing an oval or elliptical motion, which is also digging in to those contact points. Now I've never had one go bad where I couldn't get the engine running smooth, but it does happen. And I am considering rebuilding this one and putting a brand new bearing inside the housing, a good bearing. Now this has like a couple 100,000 miles on it of usage, so it's amazing that these bearings last a long time. But you have to remember that in the 80s, these bearings came from Japan, and they made quality bearings in Japan, and they still do make good quality bearings in Japan. I would not put a bearing in this that came from anywhere outside of Japan or Germany or the USA. Make sure you have a good quality bearing.